Hey, I'm Matthew Giorgio. If you're an experienced business leader, consultant, or general problem solver, you know that one of the superpowers you have to be successful is how to ask the right questions. And more than that, how to ask the right people the right questions. And then when you get an answer, how to interpret that answer. And then when you get different answers to the same question from different people, how do you mix all that together to come to the conclusion so you can make a decision and act on that information? So you know this is a real superpower that you don't just get automatically, you have to actually practice it. It's a real skill that comes with experience and knowledge and all the things that you have to do to grow as a business leader and somebody who makes decisions. So how do you teach somebody this skill? I'm going to show you how we do it using a simulation. So what you're looking at here is a leadership simulation that we have that's called GoVenture Leader, used by a number of very large companies internally to help with leadership training. And there's different scenarios you can set up, business scenarios, space travel scenarios, and so on, to put people in situations in kind of a bit of a role-playing experience where they actually practice this concept of questioning and analyzing answers and so on. So let me show you how that's done. So first, we actually begin by having a backstory that kind of puts us in a certain scenario, a certain situation, and then this particular period, and a period could be anything from a month in business, a quarter. If it's a space, it might be a parsec. It could be really anything. But at the beginning of each period, you present it with a particular challenge or an opportunity or both, and it's done so through text or video, and you have to address that issue. So how do you address that issue? Well, you do it by doing research. And one bit of research you do is by asking questions of your various stakeholders. So each scenario can be different. In this particular scenario, we're in a business scenario, so our stakeholders could include senior managers, colleagues, coworkers, customers, the general public, if it's more of a PR type thing. And you can see here we have a list of virtual characters. These are virtual characters involved in this particular simulation. And I can click on a character and ask them a series of questions. So the questions are preset, as are the answers, all designed based on the scenario in which we're in. And we can look at the questions and choose which question to ask. Now, let me show you what happens here. I'll click on the question and I immediately get an answer. And I can click on the next question and get an answer. But here's what's unique about this, is you're limited, and you may not see this all here, but you're limited by how many questions you can ask. So you can only ask each person a limited number of questions, and overall, in total, you can only ask everybody a total number of questions. So what that does is forces you to discern what are the right questions to ask and who are the people we should ask those questions. So the questions can be different. In some cases, they're same questions, different people, sometimes completely different questions based on the role of the person. So you can see here, Daryl here is a VP of sales. So I really should be asking him sales-related questions. I probably shouldn't be asking him maybe engineering questions. That's better for the R&D person. And by forcing this limit, we are requiring the learner to really conduct some critical thinking into what makes sense. And normally this simulation is played in teams. It can be played individually, but normally it's played in teams. So now you're adding this challenge of collaborating with other teammates to review this information and come to consensus as to what the right questions are to ask and of what people, and making sure you don't hit that limit where you've left some very important questions on the table and you don't have answers to them. And so what do we do once we have all this information? So that's the first step, right, is understanding the right questions, who to ask those questions of. We get the data, we get the information back, but now that the answer we're getting back may be competing, right? So one person says one thing, the other person says a different thing. How do we decide? Why is that important? How does this get reflected in this experience? Well, the way it gets reflected in this particular experience, and each simulation can be different, but in this particular experience, what the participants have to do is actually make decisions. So based on that information, I have a series of decisions. You can see we call them activities. So as a business leader, you have a whole bunch of activities you can do every period, again, week, month, quarter, year. but you're limited by time, cost, or some other limiter, whatever it may be, resources. And so you can't do everything you want to do. So you have to prioritize what's important. And of course, you also have routine activities that you have to do all the time. So we have a list of activities based on the specific scenario that we have presented and put you in here, potentially dozens of activities that you can do this period. But you can only do maybe half of them based on the limiter of time, cost, or resources or other factor. And based on the data that you've collected through your research of the stakeholders and the briefings that you've received through the videos at the beginning of the period, you decide which of these experiences or which of these activities you want to do. And again, if you're working in a team, you have to collaborate and come to consensus as to which are the best ones to do. And again, there's no perfect answers because there's always going to be compromise. There's always going to be things you cannot do, things you cannot know. And based on the information you've collected, you want to make the best and most informed decisions. And then what happens is once we make our decisions, we actually see the results of those decisions with feedback that it lets us know whether we've made the right decisions or not. And maybe we've missed asking them an important question of the right person, or maybe we asked the right questions, but we didn't really interpret the answers as closely as we should have. But this is an example of how we can put people in realistic situations to help them gain this very important skill of gathering information, assessing information, and then making decisions based on that information. I'm Matthew Giorgio. BusinessXP is the fastest and most inspiring training ever invented for future business leaders and entrepreneurs. Discover game-based experiential learning at business-xp.com.